Could any of the Campus Comics cast crew make it as a criminal mastermind? Of course not. We're too busy reading comics to plan our next heist. This is Scott Reed, and I'm joined on this episode by
Mike Atchison
and Chad Schubert.
And speaking of criminals, we will be discussing the first volume of the Brubaker Phillips criminal titled Coward. Then after that, we'll jump into the first 5 appearances of Hellboy and wrap up with some trivia and a CLZ shake. So before we dive into criminal, anybody have any hot takes they want to discuss before we get going?
No, I don't. I like this story. How about that for a hot take?
Okay, all right. Well, I was saying hot takes on other topics, but I didn't even look at the news before we started recording. I probably should have done that, but so I'm sure there's some stuff out there. Okay, here's a hot take for you, and you can. What do you think of the gender swap for Silver Surfer in the upcoming Marvel movies? So if you haven't heard, instead of getting Norrin Radd as the Silver Surfer, we're apparently going to get Shala Bal, who is Norrin Radd's girlfriend, lover, however you want to describe it. Now, they're not introducing Norrin Radd, so it's basically they're going to merge the two characters into a single character. Then, of course, there are some stories that maybe it's going to be an alternate universe version of the Silver Surfer, so we could see Norrin Radd in the future. But what do you think? Do you have strong opinions one way or the other?
Not me.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chad.
I don't have any strong opinions. I mean, I think we could all agree that most things that are in the golden and silver age are a little male heavy. So of course there needs to probably be some split. I mean, we see that in gender or as in race as well. Mm-hmm. And with Norrin being an alien, and it's kind of like, well, what gender is the gender construct even the same on that planet? Who the heck knows? So I don't think that gender really played heavily into the Silver Surfer and how they portrayed themselves by any means, from what I've read at least. So I don't think it really will affect too much, I think, with the gender swap on that.
No, we didn't even learn about Shala Bal until I think the actual Silver Surfer series. I may be off on that, but I agree with you. It really doesn't matter gender, as long as they kind of keep the essence of the character, the same, where it's this very pure-hearted individual who ultimately comes to save chooses to save the human race as opposed to destroy the human race. I think that's kind of like the key elements to the character. So I don't think I mind that too much. There was even a rumor that it was going to be, I forgot the name, Anna Joy Taylor. Anya Joy Taylor. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Was going to be the actress to play, but that was actually changed. So.
Okay.
All right. So so no other.
I did see where they announced that you guys have both read it. I haven't yet. That there will be a sequel to Nice House on the Lake that is starting up this summer.
Good.
That's a skip for me.
I was curious how the story lent, if the story lent to a sequel, if that made sense right out the gate, or if it was going to feel forced. Or
I mean, it was written, I think, for a sequel.
I would agree. The way it ended, they definitely left room for there to be a conclusion, though I think it was also written where that could be the conclusion. So it's
Gotcha.
Okay, so I don't know. Let's talk about Criminal. How about that?
That's good.
All right, so I've got a synopsis for us to go through, but before we jump into the synopsis, I always find it helpful to be introduced to a few of the characters, and I'll just mention these characters, and each of you can expound on some key element, because I just did a very, very one sentence description of these characters. Try not to go into too many story elements. We'll pick up those items as we go through the synopsis. But our main character in Criminal Volume 1, which of course is from Brubaker and Phillips. That's okay, and I'm Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. Do I have the first names correct? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And the first volume is titled Coward. So we have our coward, Leo Patterson. He's a thief and our lead protagonist in this story. So any additional comments there about Leo you want to throw in just as an introduction to the character?
I liked how the word coward, the description of that, what that entails for a person, how that was, as the story progressed, evolved into prudency. So coward really meant this guy was prudent and made very informed decisions. So I really liked that element, and I liked Leo as a character. Yes.
Okay, we have Ivan, who is an elder thief who now suffers from Alzheimer's. He's also a serious drug addict, and because of his Alzheimer's and his drug, he has to basically stay high all the time. So he ultimately raised Leo after Leo's father went to prison, and Ivan is in need of constant care throughout this series. So, anything to add about Ivan?
That covers.
Okay.
What'd you say, Shad?
I think that covers it on my end.
Yeah, it was an interesting combination of character attributes in that he was had dementia and he was also a heroin addict. And Leo made sure that the only way to really keep him from wandering away was to keep him juiced up. So
well, and part of that was he couldn't go through the withdrawals because he wouldn't understand what's going on.
Right.
That it's not like Leo kept him drugged just to keep him immobile. He kept him because it wouldn't be fair to do that to him.
Yeah.
And necessity. Yeah.
Yes.
But yet when he took him out in public, sometimes he was escorted. He escorted him, made sure he was there for him. But Ivan still had all the skills of picking out the marks in the crowd, and just that was even like a scene in the first or second issue that he's got him on the subway, and to keep his mind occupied, he was like,
who's got all the money?
Yeah, exactly. Who's the richest dude in here? Who's the richest person in here? Yeah, that was good.
Now, a couple of characters we'll introduce together here. The first one is Seymour, who is basically a crooked cop, and I'll use the phrase crooked cop a lot through this synopsis, who apparently has some history with Leo, kind of knows what he does, who he is. And then there's Jeff, yet another crooked cop who is apparently working with Seymour.
Mm-hmm.
And both of these guys are pretty bad.
Yeah, Seymour is more of the thinker. Jeff's sort of impetuous and impulsive. And Seymour's more of like trying to always calm down Jeff. But
so Seymour's the good bad cop, and Jeff is the bad cop.
Right. So. Yes, that's about as good a way as any to describe him.
All right, so we got Greta Watson. Now, Greta was the wife of a partner that Leo lost in a botched bank heist. Greta also has a daughter and is also a former addict, and I'm assuming a former heroin addict, to tie more importantly to the story. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then I have three more characters. I'll just throw them out here rapid fire. We got Royalty, and that's Roy L. T, who's basically a kingpin, right? He's a drug dealer, kingpin. He's kind of the person who they have to perform this heist for. And then we have Gnarly, who is a local bar owner, probably one of Leo's only true friends. And then one character, we'll just call him a bad dude because I don't remember if he's a cop or not. His key part of the story is he basically is going to kidnap Greta's daughter to kind of move the story along at some point. So, any other characters by name that you feel like we should mention?
No, I
I
think
don't
that
think
covers
so.
the main ones. No, and I mean, just to recap with some of the names you put out there. Greta was a great character. She was, somewhat of a love interest. I know, and she had her own spotty past. And I mean, I think this is this is like noir characters. They were just perfectly built for this. Um, I forgot who the other one was. Delron, yeah, he's just the creepiest as they come. And Royalty, it took me about the third or fourth time reading that to realize that it was a play on the word royalty. Oh,
Yep.
boy, you're slow on the pickup there, Mike. But yeah, a lot of good characters. Yes, good cast.
All right. Shad, you want to add anything real quick before I jump into the synopsis?
Nope, go ahead. You're all good.
All right, so our story starts with Leo, our protagonist, a lifelong criminal taking part in a botched bank heist. As the heist goes bad, he manages to escape along with one of the other thieves, who is apparently a friend of his, but during the escape, his friend is killed. Fast forward 5 years to him at an art exhibit, being watched by a couple of crooked cops as he pickpockets the crowd. After being made, he ditches his gets, but is caught by Seymour and Jeff, who invite him to participate in an armored car heist to steal some gems, with air quotes around gems. And I think they said what type of jewel it was, and was it
It's
rubies
diamonds.
or something? Was it diamonds? Okay.
Diamonds.
I was going to say diamonds, and I couldn't remember for sure. So when I wrote the synopsis, I just went with gems. So as far as a start to the story, anything you want to add here, either of you?
I'll say it started a bit slow for me. I think it took me a minute to really get in the groove of what Leo was, and what his motivations were. They depict him as being very good at what he did, but not very ambitious, and he was a loner. But it was a bit slow. It wasn't until later, probably a third of the way through, that I started actually getting interested.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It seemed like it took a while for it to take shape, um, and I guess seeing this is the one thing that I know I'll dive into it maybe a little bit later more, but uh, right out the gate, I was expecting. I think I've seen more of Sean Phillips's artwork more recently, and it's a lot tighter and it looks a lot better than it does here in this book. And I was like, oh, like I was the artwork wasn't pulling me out the gate, and it was a slow paced story. And so those two things is like this first kind of section, it took me a little bit to grab me too. I would agree.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and I probably am, and I often am, but I believe that this was not released as individual issues, correct? We are reading like a volume that was released as a volume, or was this released in individual issues?
Not originally.
Okay.
I think it was originally when it was because this was an icon book before it was an image book.
Okay.
And I believe it was individually issued as an
Okay.
icon. And then when they moved to putting everything out through image, they started doing everything as trades.
Okay. Because there wasn't
I think.
any issue breaks as I'm reading through this first volume. And that's kind of what made me think that was the case. But okay, so it may have
I'll
been.
research that while you're talking.
Okay, all right. So
The only thing that made me think it was individual issues originally is because either at the front of the trade here or the digital copy I have, or somewhere where I looked online, it said it collected issues 1 through 5.
Okay, well then if it says it collected issues 1 through 5, then that answers the question. But and maybe it's just how I was reading it. I didn't feel like, I mean, I would have expected like the splash pages for the first page, and then I felt like where they had like those titles like The Job, that would have been like the breaks between issues, but they weren't.
No, they weren't consistently.
Yeah, they weren't
the same
spread
length
out evenly.
Yeah.
So, okay, so
yeah, I did not feel the breaks either. I agree completely.
Okay. And if that's how it was, maybe it was, I don't know, maybe they wanted it to be released as a trade because that's how they kind of moved toward their books towards.
Mm-hmm.
But they just wrote it and it's like, okay, well, here's 22 pages. That's where we'll stop here. And and
Right, yeah.
move on to the next issue on the next time. So, but there wasn't any of those to be continued blurbs in the lower right hand corner. When we got to another page break. So,
Right.
all right. So moving on with the synopsis, I'll go a little bit here before we take another break and talk about it. So back at Leo's apartment, we are introduced to Ivan, and then Greta tracks down Leo and convinces him to help with the heist. The crew then starts putting together a plan. They bring in a few others to play certain key roles in the heist. Meanwhile, we learn that this is all because Jeff is in with a criminal named Royalty, all right, who is wanting something back. And I guess we should mention that it's kind of obscured what it is that they're trying to get back, even though we're told that it's diamonds. All right, Leo and Greta do not trust the crooked cops, thus why they're crooked cops. So they agree to watch each other's backs. We do finally get to the job, and things start correctly but quickly go south. So it turns out it's not diamonds but drugs, and that the intent was for Leo to escape without the suitcase of drugs. And then Seymour and Jeff would just be able to hide the suitcase, convince others that Leo had left with the suitcase, put the manhunt out on Leo. But Leo, because one of his rules is to always have an escape plan, Leo does manage to escape with Greta, who has been injured, and the suitcase of drugs. Greta does recover, and Leo picks up Ivan, and they hide out in an old family farm. Greta's daughter is kidnapped, and Ivan finds the heroin and overdoses on it. Leo leaves the farm to try to return the drugs to free up he and Greta from being hunted. Unfortunately, Greta calls her home, and the location of the farm is discovered. Leo returns to find Greta dead and Seymour there. Leo takes Seymour to the drugs, but hits him in the face with some uncut heroin, and then kills Seymour with his own gun. All right, so I actually read a paragraph more than I intended to there. So what all do you want to add in at this point? Because there's a lot, obviously, that happens, and I'm doing a very, very quick synopsis of the story.
Shad?
I'll go for it, Mike.
Okay. You say go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so a couple of comments. I was interested to see that there is a news strip that's it's interjected throughout the story of a story within the story, a comic character within the story called Frank Kafka, Private Eye, and it's kind of a Dick Tracy type story or character, and I kind of like that. I liked Gnarly as being the friend of Gnarly as in Gnarly, of course, being
Mike,
sort of the
how
friend.
would you spell gnarly?
What's that?
How would you spell gnarly?
Well, exactly, yeah. That's true. I don't know that there's another way, but so he's like the friend and confidant of Leo, probably his only one. And he's also sort of, I mean, it's a bar the bar he runs is sort of, I don't remember the name of it, but they will have both criminals and cops that will come in, and it's like neutral territory. They are supposed to get along while they're there and not bring business into the bar. There's Donnie's an interesting character. He becomes one of the heist participants. He's a distraction on different levels. He's got this knack for pretending to have a seizure to cause everyone to look one way while they do whatever they're going to do in another direction. So he's another interesting character.
I thought that the idea, like, wasn't it Gnarly who basically said he never understood the comic strip? It wasn't that like kind of like the punchline? Yeah. It's like the comic strip never made any sense, and I'm sitting here reading some of these comic strips, and it's like, yeah, I can see what Gnarly's talking about. So.
Right.
I wonder if that carries on through, if those comic strips kind of become the what's the pirate ship story and Watchmen, if that's kind of this ongoing thing throughout Criminal.
The
Black Freighter.
That's all I can remember too.
Yeah.
Okay. Black Freighter, yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, one of the questions that I have, and have either of you read anything into the later volumes of this series?
No.
Okay,
No.
because I was wondering if Leo is even the protagonist in volume 2.
I don't
Oh.
know, and I always say this after I've read something I kind of like. I'm like, I'm gonna keep reading, then I don't
Okay.
because something else comes and gets in the way. But
Yeah, I looked at the
yeah,
covers and it didn't look like Leo on any of the covers upcoming, but you know, he
Gotcha.
could have changed his appearance or whatever. So
yeah, they
Right.
could be somewhat just different, disconnected sets of characters, and maybe it's all put together in a final volume. I don't know, but yeah,
Mm.
I yeah, I mean, you covered a lot of ground. There were people that were going to die. You kind of knew that people were going to
mhm.
die. There's going to be betrayal and double cross and triple cross and all that stuff. You know that there was some good connection between Greta and Leo, and you know there were some touching moments, and of all, I mean, really a good story. Even the main protagonists, even if they're a criminal, if you make them somewhat redeeming or redeemable,
Mhm.
that makes them more realistic. There's a lot of heist movies that will kind of portray the lead characters like that, and
Mhm.
I enjoy those.
All right, well, I guess let's wrap up the synopsis here, and then we can go on to some other opinions about this. But Leo is able to rescue Greta's daughter, who he takes to Gnarly to protect. Leo then leaves the drugs with Jeff, but is able to follow Jeff to Royalty's hideout. Leo breaks in, and even though he is a terrible shot, he manages to take out Royalty and his crew, but Jeff does get the better of him. Jeff then calls in for help from the cops, but Leo is then able to haul himself out of the building and kill Jeff, but not able to escape the scene as the police arrive to conclude our story.
Yeah,
Any
and you know why he was able to make up for his poor
Yes.
marksmanship
Lots of bullets in a
in in
small
in an
amount of
Uzi.
time. Yeah, an Uzi.
Yeah,
The Uzi 90 millimeter, to
which
quote Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I forgot where he said he lifted that from. He took it from somebody because he's not a guy that carried guns. That was one of
Oh,
his.
it was in the Lost and Found, wasn't it? At the bar.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. So yeah, his one of his rules was not to he didn't want to kill and he didn't take guns
Uh-huh.
with him. Yep,
Mhm.
He's the Batman of criminals.
there you go.
Well, depending on which version of Batman you're talking about.
Right.
So.
Fair enough. Yes. I didn't expect. I thought I totally expect him to leave with the kid. Like, yeah, I didn't expect the turnaround, and then I was like, oh, that's such a trope that the guy that's normally the coward is then turns around and actually goes into action and seeks justice and closes it out. And that was, I think, one of the things in this kind of it wrapped up nicely, and it was just like, yeah, that makes sense, I guess. Is that he would, of course, do the right thing at the end of the day instead of being the coward.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything else story wise that you guys want to mention before we go into some of the non-story points?
No, I mean it had good plot twists, and I didn't predict. I knew there would be some unhappy endings, but
Mhm.
I didn't predict everything. So yeah, that's all I have for it.
All right. Okay, so let's talk about the art a little bit. All right, like Shad has already mentioned, this was not the art that I was expecting for this story. It was heavy, heavy shadows. The art, and I always feel bad talking about art because if I could draw like this, I would be ecstatic, right? But this is not like an art style that I normally want to sit down with a comic book and read all the time. So at least for this volume, the art was a little bit of a turn off for me. It just didn't really pull me into the
Yeah.
story a whole lot. And I don't
Well, it
know if
just
it's
it kind of became I think the same thing that you guys had talked about, or maybe Scott more primarily with the nice house on the lake, is that sometimes I got confused on the characters because I didn't feel like there was too much differentiation between them. in the way that they're drawn and just that style, it kind of lent to going like, now who's this person and are they the same person a little bit? And I kind of got that on this.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a couple of times like that for me, like whenever Leo, throws the heroin to Seymour's face. I wasn't 100% for sure that was Seymour. I had to go
Yeah.
back and like read and look for him to actually say the word Seymour to know that that's who that was.
Yeah.
I might felt like I knew who that was. I just wanted to confirm it. I will just as a side note mention that if you had trouble with the characters in this story, you will really struggle with the characters in Nice House on the Lake, because I didn't have, other than just an occasional thing with the characters, I was able to differentiate the characters. Plus, there weren't as many in this story
Yeah.
to
Gotcha.
have to differentiate between them.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so the art just wasn't great, wasn't great for me. I think probably my biggest issue with this story is that there's not anybody in my mind to root for.
Oh.
They're all criminals, right? I guess maybe with the exception of Gnarly. So maybe Gnarly's the best character in the in it, but it's kind of hard to root for Leo when you know that even though he's a criminal who doesn't kill, well, he's still a criminal, and he's out there to identity theft, and that was what he was doing at the start of the story, right? Was stealing people's ID for purposes of identity theft to make some money. I feel like he could have put his talents to better use, right? He could have pulled like a Kevin Mitnick and went and worked and tried to prevent identity theft because he knew how to accomplish it. But yeah, that's it. That always makes it tough for me on a story.
I'm just kind of like the opposite, really, because I think we're just flooded with pure black and white, good versus evil stories, and don't get enough of the shades of gray. Whereas you have Leo he's a criminal, but everything's relative, right? So he is the best or the most honorable of them, I guess. So it makes it an interesting way to root for somebody. And yeah, there's
so it's like when you're reading a story about Hitler and Stalin, you can root for Stalin because at least he's not as bad as Hitler.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Okay, that's an extreme. That's an extreme. Who's the biggest megalomaniac and mass killer? And no, I don't think it's that. I think we're talking. You're comparing them to a pickpocket. So I mean, it does. I'm just saying it makes for an enjoyable story. It doesn't mean I would want to be friends with the guy. No, and I'm not gonna put him. I'm not gonna give him a Medal of Honor for what he's done. But like I said, the word in my mind is he's redeemable because he has human characteristics. He's the same way with Greta. So I like this kind of a story. I like when the lines aren't quite as defined, and it's just different. So yeah, I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. I mean, look at him. I mean, the guy is doing. You think about this. For all his faults, for Leo's faults, he is doing what many, many, many people that don't commit crimes would not do, and that's take care of this old man Ivan. They put him in a nursing home and turn the other way and be self-righteous about it. So that's what I'm talking about there.
Yeah, makes sense.
There was a lot about Leo's rules, and those rules would come up kind of after the rule was put into effect. The whole rule about having an escape plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was the car that was set up in the, that was actually being used to block traffic. Well, it was actually positioned in such a way that if he could get to the car, he could, because the car was actually functioning, he could make his escape, right? So that's actually how they were able to get out of the tunnel where the heist was. Some of the other rules was don't kill. I'm trying to remember I didn't write down any of the rules, but those were a couple of the rules. Do you remember any of the other of Leo's rules?
No, I don't. I mean, not that you put me on, not on the spot. I can't think of them, but there were issues with trusting people and partnering with people, not being. He needed to be in control because he was the one guy. He always talks about the stupid criminals that end up in prison, and he didn't want to be. And it was interesting. He was I think we find out at the end that he's actually guilty of the murder that put his dad in prison.
Yep.
And, you know, he wasn't necessarily a coward, but
he didn't want to put himself into the situation that he had put his father into, I guess, already.
Yeah.
He didn't want to put somebody else in the situation he'd already put his father in. So
right.
And did they ever actually come out and flat out say that? They heavily implied that whenever he's talking to Seymour right before he kills Seymour in that particular scene. I don't know that I think it's just implied. Seymour kind of says, "Oh, so you killed Teague or whatever his name was," and I don't think Leo actually flat out said that, but I only read this once, so
yeah,
maybe.
I think that's a good point. You mentioned that before we started recording. I only read it once too, but I did read the second or about the last third of it again, just because that was my favorite part, and there was some cool. I mean, I think it's one, like many stories, one benefits from reading this again and knowing what you know going in, and then being able to digest some of the details better. But that last third where he goes, or that last part where he's sort of taking revenge on some of the characters, when he took out Delron, I'm almost pumping my fist in support.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and the little girl that's
Angie,
rough,
I think was her name. Yeah.
Yeah, it's dark. It's dark and sad, and what's bad is that this is a reflection of some people's reality. There are people that do these things. So it's closer. It's on, if you stratify comic book stories, you got those high fantasy ones, and you got the superhero ones, and you got the spice or the slice of life ones, and then you got this. And this one's like so close to reality that it's a little bit uncomfortable to read. And that makes it appealing in a weird way. So
and maybe that's a better way to describe this than saying that there's not anybody to root for. I guess if I want to know about the seamy side of society, I feel it would be better to read the news as opposed to read a completely fictional story. Or
you had a similar take, if I recall, when we discussed Sheriff of Babylon. Yeah. And I can appreciate that because it's not for everybody. I can't say this is a story for everybody.
No. So. All right. So we want to give this a grade, or do you have any other comments from your notes you want to throw out there?
Before we go into grading, just to answer the question previously, issue 6, which would be the second volume starting, does kick in with a new main character. So they do switch. But it is in the same world. So Gnarly and Angie are in the first issue, at least, of the next volume, and it is the Lawless family that it circles around, which I guess they are in the story. So it just doesn't focus on Leo.
Okay. Like I'm looking at the covers because, like in the digital version, they have like I guess there's 6 volumes of this altogether.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so like the third volume looks like that could be Leo, but again, it's not clear that it's Leo.
So maybe he comes back, yeah.
So maybe he makes a comeback later on. So, but he doesn't have the goatee in this image, but kind of a similar hairstyle. But yeah, I don't know if it would make any difference in whether or not I would pick this up later on or not, but. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. So, all right. So, Shad, why don't you grade this first?
Okay. All right. I gave this a 6.0, a fine. It was a crime book that felt. I mean, this could easily, and I believe it's being optioned or has been approved or whatever for a season on Amazon or something. At this point in time, so they are moving forward with it. It feels like a crime drama movie or series that is well done for what it is, but is not really my thing. So
I'm gonna be pretty close to you. I actually gave this a 5.0, very good fine. Again, without having somebody that I really felt like I could get behind and root for and be my point of view into this story. As we talked about, the art didn't do a whole lot for me. I don't know. Again, we talked about this. I don't know if Leo's in the next volume, and I don't know if I care if Leo is going to be in the next volume. I think the one thing that I can say about it is that when you mentioned that Gnarly is going to be in the next issue, well, all of a sudden, maybe that is a character that I could potentially get behind and read the next volume. So, and just as for anybody, that when I give something a 4 to a 6 grade, that means I don't regret reading it. I just don't know that I would recommend this to anybody else. That's when we get into that 6.0 to 8.0 range where it's something that, I do feel comfortable recommending to somebody else. Now, if somebody said, "Oh, I'm really into crime stories," then probably. But otherwise, I'd say probably not. So, Mike?
Very fine. Plus 8.5 is my grade. I know that this is the first volume of more similar stories by this team, and maybe the quality of the art gets better. I don't know. But on its face, I didn't really mention the art before. I thought the art was just fine. I enjoyed it. I I mean, I think it's appropriate for this kind of story. I thought the plot was good. I think there's a reason that Brubaker and Phillips have won awards. I think that I would not individually put this on the top shelf, which is sort of my little mental placement, like what you have, Scott, about whether you recommend it or keep it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is top shelf. It's this individual. I probably wouldn't put it there, but I think about the entire collection. I'm betting that I probably would. So I'm sort of, this is a predictive grade of 8.5.
Okay, to answer
Now I will say. Oh,
go ahead, Chad.
Oh, I was going to say, and now I will say, and I meant to say this before. I do want to read something more recent from these two, and maybe something that's not a crime book like this, but it does seem like they've got some murder mystery kind of stuff, and there might be something within this duo that is a little bit more up my alley. So I was kind of looking at some of their other more recent books, and I mean I think this all started because there's that book Houses of the Unholy that was in the Lunar catalog or one of the pre-order catalogs this past month. That we were talking about was kind of where all this came up of covering this. And that one seemed more like a murder mystery, and so I think I would like to venture down that road with them.
Yeah. Well, every time there's been a Brubaker Phillips collaboration, we have said, "Ooh, probably should." Yeah,
Yeah.
But we've never. But like none of us have ever read any of them. I'm looking at the ad at the back of the digital version. It's for Pulp, which is kind of like that Western Brubaker Phillips story. Whenever that was in, said, "Oh, hey, Brubaker Phillips got our book." Has anybody read anything by them? No. Well,
No.
why do we keep mentioning them
Yeah.
then if we don't know if they're any good or not?
Yeah.
One thing I forgot to mention, and I think maybe this has maybe soured my opinion on this particular story. So whenever I compare this to Brubaker Epting as a pairing, and I'm thinking of like Velvet. When we read Velvet, that book blew me away. I mean, that was I felt like a much more solid book. Now, I don't know how much further into the Brubaker Epting pairing that is compared to Criminal in the. I'm sorry, I see to the. Okay, now I'm all confused because okay, so it's Bendis Epting, right? Okay.
Well, they.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh yeah, because Brubaker and Epting were teamed up for Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Yeah. Okay. I've got to get this right because I'm just kind of talking. So Velvet was Brubaker and Epting, okay, and then this is Brubaker Phillips. So I much preferred the Brubaker Epting over the Brubaker Phillips. There we go. I think I finally have that out of my mouth correctly.
I enjoyed the art on that. I enjoyed Epting's art. I don't know if I enjoyed the story as much though.
I enjoyed both more.
But it was a spy. It was a different kind of
spy.
story, was it? Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
To answer another question, Criminal was released in issues because I'm looking in Key Collector, and there's individual issue numbers for those stories. I can't remember if we categorically said that was issues. And then it was optioned to Amazon in February of 2023, and in January of 2024, Amazon officially ordered Criminal as a series. This again is according to Key Collector. So,
okay.
All right, so it will probably be coming to Amazon Prime. So apparently, after you can watch Fallout, you can wait for Criminal to pop in next.
There you go.
I've heard that's really good.
I have also heard that's really good, and I don't know why I haven't watched it yet. So, all right, we ready to jump over to first 5 with Hellboy?
Yeah.
Why, certainly.
All right, so okay, Chad, what was your first introduction to Hellboy as a character?
I think that it was the first Ron Perlman Hellboy movie. I think that was. I don't know that I knew that it was a comic book when that movie came out.
What about you?
That?
I think there could be a common answer to this question. the first Hellboy movie.
That's what I'd say is my first knowledge was of that movie. That was in what, 93 maybe? 96? It was in the 90s.
2004.
Oh gosh, it was much later. So yeah, that's the first I knew of him. I didn't read any of the comics. I guess maybe I'd heard about it, but I think the first time I actually flipped through an issue was whenever I was helping Mike Noe sort through a collection in the back room, and there was a bunch of those little mini series, and I flipped through some of it. But yeah, I'd say my first knowledge was probably the movie or shortly before that.
And okay, let's make it a 3-way. The Hellboy, and then I made it until the second movie was like announced to come out before I even saw the first movie. I think felt this movie to, and saw the second movie, which was Golden something along those lines. Go ahead.
2008, yeah.
Yeah, so it was probably a little bit after the first movie came out. I saw it. I don't remember seeing it in the theaters because that was before I started my, movie watching, of the the big comic movies. Predates that, I guess. Okay, so Chad, what are your initial thoughts on this version of the character?
This version, and I don't know what my internet connection is like, so I may be really spotty. But my initial thoughts of this version is that I love Hellboy. I don't know why I don't read more Hellboy. Because I love the artwork. I love the dark kind of history that they kind of have built of all these weird cults and organizations, and how they all are kind of tied together, and the big monsters and the just Lovecraftian kind of creatures that Hellboy ends up fighting sometimes. And I really feel as though the original version and where we are now is so close together still, because Mike Mignola is still very much involved in the character. I think he was very much involved in the movies. So I don't feel like it strays too far at any version from the beginning to where it is now.
Okay, and it may be my internet that's acting up, not yours, just for the record.
Okay.
Mike, what about you? What are your thoughts on this version of the character?
Pretty bored.
Really?
Pretty bored. Wow. Yeah. I had a hard time. I think once I've kind of put some historical relevance to the Russian bad guy and realized he was meant to be sort of a version of Rasputin.
Well, they say that he's Rasputin later on in the story.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And, I of course, these are different. Rasputin, the real one, was murdered in the 19 teens, and he was, like an advisor to the royal family in Tsarist Russia, and this is mostly set, begins in the 1940s around World War II. So it got a little bit better, but the mysticism didn't really appeal to me. Yeah, I mean, other than the Mignola art, it didn't really it didn't jump out at me at all.
Okay. See, that's exact opposite of my take on this. I am extremely surprised by how much I enjoyed these first 5 issues that had Hellboy in them. Probably excluding the Next Men issue, but the San Diego
Yeah.
Comic Con issue and then the Seeds of Destruction mini, I thought were top notch. I was shocked. I did not expect to enjoy them as much as I did.
Yeah.
So to me, I don't feel like, well, one, I feel like this character is probably pretty comparable to what you would see in the character now, though I think Shad, you kind of hit on that with Mignola still kind of being in control of the character and it being his universe that we have Hellboy and BPRD, those comics in.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's a whole lot of change with the character as far as what he looks like now versus how he was portrayed then. I think it's pretty common or pretty comparable.
Yeah.
So I guess, is there anything that either of you want to add about how this character you feel like maybe has changed since his initial incarnations that we read here? Again, since I haven't read a whole lot of current Hellboy, I don't really have anything to do as a comparison for how he was versus how he is.
I don't see a big change. I don't read it regularly. I actually, in comic form, my introduction to Hellboy was probably when I got like a tablet to read, and like Comixology first kind of came out, or Amazon Kindle, whatever, was kind of, and they would give you like a free book here and there. And I remember specifically there being a couple of Hellboy books that were no charge, and I was downloading free books like crazy at that time, and just taking in whatever was available. And that was, so I would check in on Hellboy, I guess, probably once every year or a couple times a year, and get like a book. And consistently over that time, I kind of know what I'm getting when it comes to it. And it, having not read Seeds of Destruction though, this mini before, it doesn't feel like it's really changed at all as far as the vibe. You kind of know what you're getting, it seems like.
Mike, anything to add on changes to the character?
I haven't read enough of it to be able to show, talk about any distinctions. I haven't read any modern Hellboy. I've not even seen any of the movies. So,
oh wow.
Yeah.
So you didn't see the first movie?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay.
No, if I did, it didn't stand out to me. But I think he's a visually appealing character, and he's got sort of that sort of flip wit to him. He's an interesting character in and of himself. But it just seemed like the little San Diego Comic Con. The first appearance was a 4-page appearance, right in that promotional deal, and he's just basically fighting a giant monster dog in a deserted western town. And in the second appearance, it's in like a story within a story, where they, it's a Next Men story with John Byrne art, and then very different artwork, in that those characters from the Byrne story, the Next Men story, then meet Hellboy, and it's your demon fighting monsters. And it seems like it's just, I think a lot of whole wash, rinse, repeat type stuff going on would be my guess. And I say that that's not a nice way to say it, because it just does. I can only read so many stories like that. Now, the Seed of Destruction, I thought it was complex enough to make it for a better story. Did you guys read all the way through to the end, or did you actually stop with the third issue, since that was?
Well, I like this so much that I read that entire first volume, which went
Oh,
into the second and or third uh, miniseries for
yeah,
Hellboy.
yeah,
So that's how much I enjoyed it. Is I just kept going. Once I got to the end of Seeds of Destruction, I kept going because I was really really enjoying it.
yeah, yeah. Maybe if there'd been, I mean, this was it being his first major story arc. It didn't have a whole lot of his background. Maybe if I had a little bit more of the background, I would have been more invested in the character. But
Well, I'm going to say that was probably by design
mhm,
that we didn't get the origin story right out of the gate because I think after having seen the movies, if I remember correctly, there is an origin story for Hellboy, but it comes much later on because I was one of the things I was surprised about is that Hellboy's quote unquote father dies in
Mhm.
this Seeds of Destruction. And I was
Right.
like, wow, because he's around, for the origin story, which again must have been told much later on. And I'll have to look up and see what that origin story was. But I was surprised by that because I felt like he was very instrumental. Having watched the movies, I thought he was, he played prominently in at least the first movie. If I remember, it's been a long time since I've seen it, and
mhm.
I would have assumed that he was kind of like the leader of the BPRD at least for a while. But no, it's kind of like out of the gate. Now he's gone. So any story that
Yeah.
has a father is a flashback type of a story, as far
Mhm.
as continuity goes. So that really surprised me reading this.
Yeah. That is a draw that is that you do get dropped in like what 50 years after he's been discovered or and so it is kind of a you've got so much front and back that you can play with and that is kind of that's appealing to me uh in there is that you kind of drop in and go I've got so much to learn about this character if you like it out of the gate you've got so much more you can be invested in but
Yeah.
as I just saying if you're not grabbed by it out the gate it leaves some lacking in that too.
He's seen as he goes into like to fight whatever monster it is he's fighting this time. It seems like he's very relaxed about it, and it's just like you said because he's been fighting monsters for 50 years now. It's not anything new to him, so
Yeah, that's
it's like,
true.
yep, I'm just gonna go take care of this. We'll see what happens. I'll punch it with
Yeah.
my hand that can't be destroyed. Let's go.
Right.
What is it? The Fist of Doom or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah, yeah.
But like I
I
said, I don't want to sound like I'm coming off too negative. Maybe that's
Well,
what I'm
you
sounding
are.
like. I know, but I'm not backtracking on what I'm saying. It's not my favorite story, and
Yeah.
and but I like the character as a character. I think the design and the sort of his powers, and I like him kind of like I like Etrigan the Demon. But it's not a character that I will just start reading a solo series with Etrigan. So I don't know. Maybe it's the genre that doesn't appeal to me as much.
Well, you don't like supernatural. I apparently don't like criminals. So there we go.
There you go. It all balances out.
That's right. That's right. So I was surprised by how involved John Byrne was with this character initially. That
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I did not know that at all. So whenever, there's this constant little blurbs in these stories between Mignola and Byrne, Byrne thanks Mignola for letting him include the character. Mignola thanks Byrne for helping with the story. I I did not realize how pivotal he was in the creation of this character. That was a big shock to me.
Right. And then he's just done after the this storyline and he it's just Mignola after and in the second uh story arc and beyond.
Yeah. But it turned into a hell of a franchise, didn't it?
Yep, and it's still going.
Yeah, it did.
So, which of these 5 issues was your favorite, Shad?
Oh, this is a rough one. I was laughing because Mike was like, the San Diego Comic Con one, he was just fighting a dog and that was it. And I was like, that was kind of one of my favorites. Just because it was so short and simple and I like Anubis also. I think Anubis is just a cool character in folk in the lore and all of that as well in mythology. But I would say probably issue 2 is my favorite. I love that it starts off with the house. I can't even think of what it's called right now. Just that, and every one of these issues is fantastic with the colorist, and I wish that I wrote down the colorist name, but Cavendish Hall, like that first just one page of Cavendish Hall, and just it's a horror story. It's the creepy old lady, and it just all of that issue is just so good, and but issue 3 is awesome too, because I love the flashbacks that we changed to a black and white story at that time, and kind of tell the backstory of Rasputin, and so yeah, but I would say issue 2 is probably my favorite.
Mike, did you have a favorite issue?
I'd say probably the third issue of the Seed of Destruction, just because it culminated and you got to see it all come together, and got a little bit more explanations, and yeah, I'd say issue 3 of that. I'm sorry, issue 4, because I read on into all the way to the end of that arc. Yeah,
I'm just going to cheat and say I liked the Seed of Destruction story the best, because
yeah, that's
because I liked the Anubis story, but it was just I wanted more. The Burn Next Men story, I was just like, that was like a throwaway story. I didn't really actually care for that too terribly much, and it didn't add anything to the character.
It was a Hellboy commercial, essentially.
Yeah.
It felt like. It was like, boy, what are you doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, let me comment about that, because I was interested in that. I guess I never had any clue, nor would I, because I didn't ever read any of this, but that Hellboy and the Next Men somewhat shared a universe. So even if it was, sort of like Earth 1 and Earth 2, where they, crossed over, and they thought it was like those boys that were in Next Men. They were saying, well, we've heard of Hellboy, but he's just a comic book character.
He's just a comic book character. Yeah. I think they just wanted a way to kind of introduce that character. So that's what they came up with. And Byrne being the creator he was, I think he felt like that was a good way to do it. Oh, I'm sure he probably thought about exactly what you're saying, how DC handled that. It's like, let's do something like that. So. All right. So, Shad, do you plan to seek out more stories with Hellboy?
Yes, always. I think I would have originally just continued on my journey of like I said, once or twice a year I read an issue of Hellboy and move on with my life. But I think after reading this first volume, I want to continue with a little bit more intention, maybe.
Mike, what about you?
Probably only if there was a crossover with Batman.
Or the JLA. A JLA crossover. You'd read that. I think I definitely am. Like I said, I went ahead and finished the first volume after I started it. So I will at least get into the second volume. I don't know if I want to start going into the whole Mignola verse and start reading BPRD and Abe Sapien and all the other characters, but maybe just kind of get a taste for him here in like the main Hellboy storyline and see how that goes. So
yeah.
All right. Anything else to add?
Just what you mentioned, Abe Sapien. He was probably my favorite character in the whole book. Yep. That's it.
Shad, any final thoughts?
I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Well, guess what? It is time for some trivia. All right. So Mike and Shad, get your thinking caps on.
All right.
All right. So, of course, we have here comic book trivia from Blood Moon Comics. All right. This is let's see, what page of trivia? We have the back cover. I'll call that 0. And then page 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is page 5 of trivia, though it's not the 5th page of the comic. So here we go. Question number 1. Who was the pilot of the rocket when the Fantastic Four initially got their powers?
Ben.
Do you happen to know his last name?
Oh my God. Yeah, Grimm.
Okay, that is correct. I thought you would get that one. This is I don't know. I'm sorry. This looks like it's primarily Marvel. So just to give you a little.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So yeah, I know that's gonna not good. Oh, and by the way, I got 4.5 out of 8 for those keeping score. I depending on Mike's answer to one of these questions, I may give myself a 5.5. So we'll just see, and he can listen to my argument, and we'll decide if I'm correct or not. So, question number 2: name one of the 2 artists credited with the cover art for Marvel Spotlight number 2, the first appearance of Werewolf by Night.
Name one of 2 of the artists.
One of 2 artists.
Wolf by Night.
So that'd be the penciler and the inker. You can do either the penciler or the inker.
Man,
I got this one wrong. If it gives you any, relief in knowing that I missed this one.
Okay, let me think of. Trying to think of the era. I guess it'd be early 70s, but I'm not sure. And I'm trying to think of who, would be a horror type artist. It wouldn't be someone like Ross Andrew that would do Superman. It wouldn't be John Buscema. He liked Conan type stuff better than superheroes, but I don't know that he liked horror. I'm just going to throw out Herb Trimpe just as a guess.
That is incorrect. All right, I'm going to give you a hint for a second guess. I guess I should have let Shad chime in on this. Did you want to add anything?
Oh, you're
Shad?
good. That one.
Okay.
That one. Yeah. No, I'm not.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bonus on this one, Mike. So
Okay.
I would consider this artist is typically considered a DC artist, and also did the cover for Tomb of Dracula #1.
Oh my gosh. It wasn't Wrightson, was it?
It was not Wrightson, so it was Neil Adams.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense, yeah.
Okay, all right. Question number 3. This is a softball pitch for you here. Who was the writer of The Killing Joke?
Oh, Alan Moore.
That is
I almost
correct,
said Brian
yes.
Boland. I'm like, bum, bum.
I would have asked you to think about that, and I would
Yeah.
give you a chance to correct your answer on that one. So. All right, question number 4. In the Inhumans, what is Lockjaw's primary power?
Ooh.
The teleportation.
Would you like to accept that answer, Mike?
Hey, I'm going to defer completely. Yes, I'll accept it.
That is 100% correct.
Woo! Good stuff, Shad. Do we get to combine our scores?
Oh,
yes,
100%,
we do.
yeah.
All right.
So, okay, so you're 3 out of 4 at this point. So, all right, this is now I was 3 out of 4 at this point as well. So, question number 5: what is the name of the gang that terrorizes Gotham City in The Dark Knight Returns?
Oh.
You have a reprieve here because I missed this one.
Who is the mutants?
That's what I was going to say. Yes.
That is correct.
Oh, yes. I seriously, that is exactly what I was going to say, but I was hoping to get a hint from Shad. Okay, you got it, buddy. Nice.
All right, so you're ahead of me at this point. So, question number 6. All right, this is my protest question. Who was the artist who co-created Daredevil with Stan Lee?
Oh. I don't know.
Wasn't
Right.
Ditko, and it wasn't Kirby or Ditko, either one of them. Let's say, man, Don Heck did a lot of Iron Man, but
I got nothing.
John Severin.
Okay, that is incorrect.
Hmm.
All right, so I'm gonna give you a follow-up hint. See if you can get it with a follow-up hint. A character we talked about before we started recording. This artist was instrumental in the creation of that character.
Okay, remember. Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Okay, you
Fill
cut
in
out,
the answer.
Scott. I didn't hear that. It broke up.
One of the character that we talked about before we started recording, this person was instrumental in creating that character we talked about before recording.
Okay, I'm totally lost because I only picked up part of that. That's the character we talked about before we. Yeah, you were cutting out. I didn't hear all that.
Oh. Yeah, I got nothing.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello?
My internet is suddenly choppy, so I don't know how much of this you are hearing. So the answer was Bill Everett.
I would not have gotten it.
Who co-created the Submariner.
I picked up on the Submariner, but I was like, I still don't know who had anything to do with Submariner.
Okay, now I hear you, and yes, I would have gotten that.
Okay. All right.
But you don't have to give it to me. So yeah.
Okay. Question number 7, and again, my internet's being cantankerous. Which Ninja Turtle wears a blue mask? I know Shad knows this one.
I always mess them up. I think I know, though.
Okay.
You want me to guess?
Yeah, you go. You have a better shot than I do.
I think it's Michelangelo.
That is incorrect. Leonardo wears the blue mask. Okay. I got that one right.
Orange.
Yeah, I catch back up with you now because I got that one right. Okay. Last question, then we'll come back and we'll discuss my protest on question number 6. Name the writer-artist team on Giant Size X-Men #1. I got half of this right, just for the record.
Okay, the writer-artist team on X-Men Giant Size #1 would be Len Wein.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And oh, I'm blanking. I am blanking bad. He was the guy. He was a Legion artist.
Mm-hmm.
He did most of the Legion designs. Oh, God. I know who it is. I just can't think of the name. That stinks. He created. I know that Nightcrawler was meant to be a Legion character.
Yeah. We talked about this in a past episode.
Yes, and
first 5
I'm
Legion. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm blanking on his name.
It was this whole biography, but
I know I'm going to get this. I know.
How much time should I allow you?
How long will it take you to get this?
That's right.
I know, because we're sitting here
recording, and I just want to
Cockrum.
There you go.
Got it.
All right.
So Heavens to Murgatroyd. I'm just like, I sat there and read I got a book on Dave Cockrum, like one of those reference books, and that's just I'm attributing that to my advanced age.
All right. So I have that you have 5 correct, okay? Because you had the Ben Grimm correct, you had the Killing Joke correct, you had the teleportation correct, you had the mutants correct, you had Len Wein and Cockrum correct. So that's 5 out of 8. All right. So here's my protest. So who was the artist who co-created Daredevil with Stan Lee? And of course they say it's Bill Everett, but everything you read about Daredevil and his creation also talks about Kirby being heavily involved in the creation of Daredevil. It goes just because he did the cover to Daredevil #1. They point to the Billy Club as being a Jack Kirby design, So my answer to question number 6 was Jack Kirby, which was incorrect according to this. So
I think that's worthwhile of an appeal, and I would have because we lost connection a little bit. I thought you were asking who the artist that created Submariner, but you were talking about that's where, yeah.
Yeah,
And
well,
I
that
knew that
was
was Everett. Yeah.
yeah. So that was my follow-up to you to
I
give you an
see.
additional hint
Okay.
about
Okay.
after you had gotten it incorrect with the who'd you say, Don? No, Herb Trimp is who you went
Herb
with,
Trimp.
right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So I was like going to give you a follow-up to try to
Okay.
clarify who
Either
it
way, I
was.
got it wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So anyway, so I don't know. I was 4.5 or 5.5. You were 5. We'll just see. I don't know.
And Shad and we collaborated, so
That's
you know
right.
how
No,
that
no, it's
goes.
always a collaboration.
Yes.
It's one of us and Shad versus the other one of us and Shad. So Shad has dual loyalties.
I'm the handicap. Yeah.
That's right. All
I can't
right.
believe that I got as many right as I did.
This was this was your round, Shad. This was definitely your best round. Yes.
That's as good as it gets. Yeah.
It's all downhill from there, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Peak.
CLZ shake time.
Right.
Okay. What do we have? Oh, great. Deathstroke, Volume 2, issue number 1. All right. So this is part of New 52? Yeah. So this is the New 52 Deathstroke. So why do I own this? Because I bought all of the New 52 first issues, like many people did. I have actually intended to eventually dump all those books, and it has not yet been purged from my collection. So I did read it. I did not continue with Deathstroke, and actually didn't start reading Deathstroke again until Christopher Priest took over on Deathstroke. So I read that for quite a while. It was starting to fall apart towards the end of his run, I thought. But overall, I thought that run was pretty good, but I really have no memory at all of this New 52 Deathstroke.
But who are the creators of that first?
So that was, let's see, Kyle Higgins, art by Joe Bennett. And actually, so in this one, what I do remember about this issue is that Deathstroke puts together a team, I think, to go on some job, and at the end, to prove that Deathstroke's still a tough guy, right? He basically kills all the rest of his team.
Mm.
So just to prove he's a bad guy, I don't know. That's kind of vaguely what I remember about this issue. So yeah, it wasn't good.
Okay.
Would not recommend.
All right. You want me to go?
Either of you go.
All right. I'm not shaking well enough. There we go. Well, looky there. It's a new one, newer. It's Rorschach number 11. And, the one by Tom King and Jorge Fornes. Something did we cover that, I believe, didn't we? Yeah. Came out in August of 21. Has it been 3 years already? Good grief. Yeah, so there's not much to say about that. We covered it already, and it's still in my collection. I got the entire run. I don't know that I've ever sold any of the King runs or King series. So it was good. Definitely different, but it was good.
Definitely enjoyed Rorschach. So.
Yep.
All right, Shad, what do you got?
All right, let's see. I got the Sandman volume 10. The Wait. I got a whole volume this time.
So you have your trades in CLZ then, huh?
Absolutely. If I didn't, then I wouldn't have half the collection I have, because that's mostly what I've got. Yeah, so this is issues 70 through 75 of the Sandman, the final issues of the main run and this is obviously with the Wake. It is the scene of, or the death of Dream spoilers and the rebirth of Dream spoilers in there. So yeah, it's a really, really good one. I really enjoyed that run. That obviously I love the whole run, but that last final volume was really good.
That arc there kind of fell apart on me. It's like I did not like that as an ending to that series.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No. He's dead, but he's not dead. No.
Well,
Make up your
Morpheus
mind.
is dead. It's a changing of hands of the god, essentially. Is that Morpheus is dead and Daniel is the replacement.
But he's still Morpheus and still looks like Morpheus and knows everything that Morpheus knew, and so is he not just Morpheus?
He's the pale version of it. He's the well, I guess they're both pale. He's the white robe where he's like Gandalf the white versus Gandalf the gray kind of style. That's
But yeah,
put it in
so
Lord of the Rings fashion.
Oh, okay. And one last thing before we do our sign off here. So,
Yeah.
as I was researching my protest on that Daredevil question, I discovered that there was an attempt in 1975 to create a Daredevil Black Widow TV show. Was completely unaware of this until today. And this was actually, the promotional shots included Angela Bowie, ex-wife of David Bowie, was going to attempt to play the Black Widow. I don't even know who was going to be Daredevil. But I thought it was also interesting that she auditioned to be Wonder Woman as well.
Oh, wow.
And Angela Bowie?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I have to look that up.
So yeah, there's only a couple of promotional shots. It's something that she instigated with some TV studios, so it's not like there was ever any serious consideration apparently. But I literally spent 30 seconds looking at that. So just look up 1975 Daredevil Bowie, and you can probably find this weird screenshot of the costume. But all right, so Shad, what do we got coming up in episode 184 of the Campus Comics Cast?
We are going to be looking at the pre-orders in the different catalogs, the next phase and the previews catalog and Marvel and all that good stuff.
And do you want to go ahead and tease 185 since we actually have planned that far ahead for once?
Absolutely. We are well planned, so we might as well talk about it. I have to pull up my notes real quick, though. We are doing the first 5 of the Submariner.
Oh, it ties back to trivia with Bill Everett, right?
Weird how that works. And then, where is my notes? I've lost them. And then we're going to be doing World Tree Volume 1.
All right. Okay. And Shad, if somebody wanted to reach out to you besides podcasts@birdcomics.com, how could they do that?
You could do that at shadschubert.com actually right now, which will direct you to my Facebook page at the moment, but I am working on getting a little link tree set up there, or whatever you call it, to point you in all the directions of the different music and podcasts and all that good stuff coming up.
And how would you spell Shad Schubert for somebody attempting to go to shadschubert.com?
It is SHAADSCHUBERT.com.
Common spelling.
Mike, what about you?
Well, it's the old reliable email, m.atchison90@gmail.com, and Mike Atchison5 on X. And I'm thinking about getting a Blue Sky account. I'm thinking about maybe doing that transition, so we'll see.
What's Blue Sky?
Yeah. Have you heard of it?
So
no.
Whenever the guy who previously owned Twitter, at one point he was going to do an open source version where people could take their data in and out. So they came up with a new thing called Blue Sky, and it actually went live about a year or two ago. Initially it was invite only. I'm not for sure what its status is now, as far as if anybody can sign up or not.
It's what I've been told is that it's no longer invite only.
Invite only. Okay. So a lot of people were looking for a refuge from X/Twitter, and some people ended up on Blue Sky. Some people ended up on Threads.
Mastodon.
Some people ended up on Mastodon. So those are kind of like the big three competitors now to X. As far as I know, X is still the biggest of the 4. But yeah, there you go.
And one last comment. I just looked up the Angela Bowie, both as Wonder Woman and Black Widow. She definitely pulls off Black Widow better.
Yes. The wig probably helps.
Yes, and she also definitely looks better than the guy playing Daredevil.
Yes, the Daredevil costume is awful.
It's
So,
awful. Yeah.
yeah. It's more Daredevil, or it's more devil than Daredevil.
Yeah, right.
So yeah. And I am Scott Reed. You can find me at burgcomics.com, BURG comics.com, with links to social media and eBay store. And hopefully I will eventually get that page up that has the volleyball comics that I'm looking for. But
Oh yeah, yes.
Oh yeah.
haven't posted that
Yeah.
yet. So, and we'll be back soon with next phase.
You want to read something again that I can forget and not read until the night before. Right. I'm trying to think. Let's see. Like a DC, anything new that's come out? Hey, Shad, do you want to read World Tree? Yeah. Let's read World Tree. Let's talk about it. There we go. I will read it again, and maybe I'll have different thoughts on it, but that would give me a good second read on it. Okay. Yeah, let's do that. I like that. Are you okay with that, Mike? World Tree? Absolutely. Okay. Do you have those issues? I have the first several, 5 or 6. Okay, well, I think the first story arc is 5, so I should cover them. So with this, whatever the first story arc is. Yeah, volume 1 is, I assume it's 1 through 5, but. Yeah, 1 through 5, you're right. Okay, good, cool. All right. Okay, all right, World Tree, good. W0RLDTR33. Yeah, spell that correctly, you know. I put that in the chat. No, I'm just putting it on my notes. I'll put it in the chat right now. Yeah, okay, add it, yeah. Okay. I'm not going to spell it all dumb, though. That's not dumb, that's proper. It's not dumb if it's the correct way to spell it. I won't know what you're talking about if you put W-O. We'll be looking for the actual World Tree. But... Oh, no, it's like reading something that Trevor Von Eden wrote. Have you ever seen his post on Facebook? No. Oh, okay, hold on. I gotta share this with you. I got a good story. I gotta find this first. Oh man, now that I say this, I'm looking through his posts and I'm not seeing any of them that are crazy. Nothing too scandalous. No, it's not like they're scandalous, but like he interjects emojis in the middle, like multiple emojis in the middle of words, and like he'll have words that are like half letters, half emojis, and it's like it hurts my brain to read them. And okay, now here's a let's see if I can share this here. I remember saying this more frequently whenever so like right here, I mean you can just see all the emojis, you know, in this. Oh my god. Yeah, I just like, and that's common. Like he would have 3 or 4 sentences at every single, you know, word. Oh, that would make it hard. Yeah. So how Jack Johnson became the boldest man in boxing history. Okay. So, but yeah, anyway, that's what it is. So he puts a smiley face for the O. He puts the prayer for A. He puts I'm not sure what that's supposed to be for the C. It's just like constant. So it's like, yeah, it's just crazy. So, oh my goodness. Wow. So I had it. Okay, so of course he was at SlukyCon, right? So I go up to him that first day and I reintroduced myself and I was like, hey, we did the interview last time you were here. And he's like, oh yeah, I remember you. Did you ever post that?